Hi, my name is Chelsey and I'm a freshman,
I'm Claire, I'm a junior.
and we are here to talk about our projects for XFic, experimental nonfiction journal class thing. Cool. So why don't we just start with, what project are you working on?
Okay, so I'm working on a piece about, it kind of started out being about eavesdropping and like people watching and why we enjoy that. But it's progressed a little bit more into like the psychology of stalking and the experience of stalking. So I am stalking a celebrity and writing about it.
Which celebrity?
M. Night Shyamalan, the filmmaker, partly just because he lives here and is relatively accessible, but also because his movies are very interesting and there's a lot of sort of weird mystery lore around him. So I thought it would be fun.
Yeah, so what inspired you to go after like a celebrity in particular?
Partly it was that like stalking of celebrities is like a thing, and it's often like becomes very public when if they like actually succeed. So I felt that would be interesting to explore, and also because like stalking a normal person is creepier. Like I don't know, it seems less interesting and also like less ethical. So I was going to go for someone in Philadelphia who's famous enough that stalking them would be reasonable.
So why stalking?
Well, I had the idea because I like happened to sit at a restaurant next to this guy who had a really funny conversation. So I tried to find him on Instagram, and when I did, he turned out to be like a soap opera star in Australia. And I was just sort of amazed by how much I could find on the internet just from sitting next to him at lunch. And he like, all I knew was his like first name and like some piece of information about his friend. And suddenly like I had his Instagram and his girlfriend and his friend and his friend's girlfriend and like all public. So I was like, wow, the internet is crazy. So yeah, that was sort of how I got to at least eavesdropping, and then it progressed from there.
Yeah, I've definitely stalked people online.
We all
Pretty
have.
common thing. I mean, you don't really think about it, I guess, but
Right. And it seems like it's like not a big deal at all, but then doing it in real life is a big deal, and I'm sort of interested in that difference.
it's really cool. So what steps have you taken in like writing this piece?
I've done a lot of internet stalking, just like normal stuff, and like reading a lot about him, his movies. And then I drove out to where he lives. I could not find his actual house because that information is not on the internet. But I found a restaurant where he supposedly goes to a lot and stuff like that. Obviously, I did not run into him, but I just kind of drove around his neighborhood, allegedly. We'll see if I'm right about where it is. And yeah, so far that's what I've done, like actual like excursions. And it was really fun.
Do you think that you will eventually meet him?
I hope so. I don't want to like go too far on the creepiness, but if I can find like an event he's going to be at that I could feasibly show up at, like I'm going to try.
Yeah, that would be super cool. I mean, just to meet someone that famous, but like stalking them is like a whole different level.
Yeah.
Has there been any like difficulties or challenges with like actually translating this piece into like nonfiction?
Yeah, it's definitely been hard to know like what tone to take, because like when I'm doing it, when I'm thinking about it, it's kind of funny and like this is such a ridiculous thing to be doing on a Saturday, but I don't really know how to like translate that into a piece, because I want it to be like funny and entertaining. Usually when I write, it has sort of like a funny tone, but I also want to like make some serious observations about like why we want to internet stalk, why we want to know stuff about other people that we don't know, like why is it fun? So yeah, it's been hard to find a balance of that, and I think once I have like more research done and like more experience content, I will try to find like exactly what I'm trying to say in the end about stalking and find a balance between the funny and the serious.
Yeah, I think it is really hard to like balance that kind of thing, because I don't know, you never know like when you take it too far or like if it becomes too much of a downer thing.
Right. Yeah, it can totally go either way, and it's like hard to know where, if you're writing a very serious piece and you like inject humor, like is it inappropriate? And if you're writing like a joke piece and then try to make it like deep, like am I might sound dumb. So, I don't think it'll ever sound dumb, but it is hard.
Yeah, so what other ideas did you have or maybe pitched to get into the class?
I had one other idea that I pitched. It was about like religion among like young people, because I think like there's a shift in like religious observance like generationally. So I wanted to interview like Penn students of lots of different faiths about their experience of being religious, and then also like, I don't know, go to various faith services and just like write about my experience doing that. But Professor Kirk and I both agreed that this one was better. Jay. Oh my God, should I call him Jay?
Professor Kirk.
I've never said that before.
Yeah.
Jay and I both agreed that the eavesdropping / stalking would be more interesting.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because the religion thing, because that's kind of where I started off with like my pitch. So what I'm writing about is prison chaplains and the experience of like faith while being incarcerated. So like as a part of the project, I went to a prison very briefly, was not allowed to see like a lot, and then I interviewed 3 chaplains, and ultimately I am focusing on one of them. But what drew me to that project was that I'm not personally like very religious, and my family really isn't. But I've always thought like, what would that change if like something really bad were to happen? Because it's like a pretty common thing that you see, that like when people go through hard times, they become more religious or like think more about those kinds of things. So yeah, I was wondering like, is that like a selfish thing to have happen to you? Like if you rely on it only during hard times. Yeah, and like being incarcerated can be like devastating, obviously.
What has been the turning the interviews into writing process like for you?
Yeah, it's been really difficult, and I'm still like in the middle of writing my first draft. Because I'm focusing on a specific person, I'm doing a profile of her like entire life, and I asked about like everything from like her childhood to like what she's doing now that she's like retired from the prison system. It's been really challenging thinking about like what I want to focus on, because so many different things have happened in this person's life, and her name is Phyllis Taylor. She's prison chaplain, awesome lady. But yeah, like it's hard, it's difficult to figure out what to focus on, and also because she is a real person and these are things that actually happened to her, it's hard because it's a creative class, and so you're taking some liberties with the way that you describe things or set up scenes, but you can't just be like totally inaccurate or make like construct it in such a way that it's not real anymore. Right. So it's been difficult trying to figure out like how creative I can get, I guess.
And maybe how like experimental, in terms of like, what are you thinking for the experimental format? Yeah,
so that is the problem that I have right now, because a lot of what makes it experimental is like how you put yourself in the story. Right now I am very confused about that, because I feel like with such a heavy topic, I can run the danger of like making it about me, even though this story is about her and also the people that she's worked with. So that's something I'm still struggling with, because I don't want it to make it seem like, oh, this like privileged person is writing about the lives of people who are less privileged and her voice is the authoritative one. Like that's something that I was really worried about in the beginning.
Right. That is really interesting. I guess it will depend on what else you decide to include and like how your interviews turn into the story.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
As far as the experimental part goes, I was thinking of just writing her story, kind of like how you would write fiction, like if you were focusing on like a protagonist who's undergoing these struggles, because there is like a very clear chain of events in her life, and I thought it'd be cool to make some of those into like fully fleshed out scenes. But like going back to what I said before, I don't know how much liberty I could take with like semi-fictionalizing like a real person's life.
Right. Interesting. That's really cool. So what other ideas did you pitch to Jay before the class?
Yeah, so honestly, I had a pretty hard time thinking of things. Like I knew that I really wanted to be in the class because I knew it would be something like different and very challenging. So because he said, like, he framed it as being very experimental, the first thing I thought of was like the experience of being isolated, because I used to think that I was an introvert, but like near the end of high school and like coming to college, I realized that like I spend time constantly with other people, and I feel like I might actually need it to like be happy. So I was wondering like how isolation could like affect someone, and not just like socially but also physically. So I was thinking about isolation tanks. I don't know, I feel like there's like a different name for them.
Like float tanking?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically they're like the tanks where you can like go and just be suspended in water, and like everything is completely dark around you. So I was wondering like what the feeling of that would be. And also there are certain rooms, I think there's one in Drexel, they're like completely soundless. So like people sit in them in the dark and they can hear like their internal organs, and like that's the only thing.
Oh my god, that would freak me out.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of people can only last like a couple minutes before they like feel like they have to get out, because it's like total silence except for yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was an idea, but I thought that that was a little I wanted something that was more grounded, I guess. And yeah, I like that I'm focusing on like a specific person and trying to tell their story.
No, I think especially knowing like what you've found out after going to the prison and the person that you've met, like this is clearly going to be a good, fruitful project.